The daughter of the CEO of a former contract manufacturer started making noise during the company dinner party, ruining the event. I tried to quiet her down, but the next thing I knew, she snapped at me. She took a glass of wine from the table and splashed it in my face. The wine soaked into my face and down to the chest of my shirt. "Get the hell out of here. You're going to get a stain." "Oh my God, what have you done? Do you think you will be forgiven for doing this?" "Of course I will. My father is the CEO of a company that uses you subcontractors. As his daughter, I can do whatever I want." She thought she and her father were so great. I knew I had to stand up one day, and it looked like that day had finally arrived. "If that's the case, tell your father that he is relieved of his duties as of today." Right now, I raised my voice to confront her with a truth that the CEO's daughter would never know. My name is Leonard. I'm the 55-year-old CEO of a factory that manufactures parts for industrial precision instruments. Although the factory and the company are newcomers, having only been in business for about 7 years, it is highly regarded in the industry for its high manufacturing capacity and technical capabilities. Newly established town factory is how my company and factory stand in the public eye. In fact, we have established ourselves as a subcontractor for a major precision equipment manufacturer. Our relationship with the manufacturer, the main contractor, has not been bad since the company was founded. We have come this far without missing out on open and frank exchanges of opinions. It may be an exaggeration to say that the prime contractor and the subcontractor are equal, but in my opinion, we've been able to maintain that kind of relationship. "Oh, hi, how may I help you?" a voice interrupted. Yeah, I'm here to discuss delivery and future production plans." "Plans? I haven't heard anything about that." "What? That can't be. Last week I arranged the date and time with the person in charge. One day, I was on my way to deliver the product to the manufacturer of the main contractor as usual. The person in charge on our side and I went out together. We were supposed to go directly to the manufacturer to confirm the schedule and work out the details of the plan for the rest of the day. I had assumed that if I went to the delivery, I would meet with the manufacturer's representative and we would discuss the details. However, the manufacturer's representative did not show up that day. Instead, a woman named Elizabeth appeared in front of us. I knew Miss Elizabeth well. She is the daughter of the CEO of the manufacturer's main contractor and is rumored to be a powerful person in the industry. "If you don't mind, I'd like to have a moment of your time." Elizabeth appeared in front of us and looked at us suspiciously. She had no way of knowing what I had planned for the day. She assured me that there was no internal schedule that she was not aware of, and she stifled my request for a meeting with the person in charge. How could I possibly accept such a one-sided offer? Elizabeth's brow wrinkled as she glared sideways at me and the person in charge on our side. She wouldn't let a subcontractor or anyone else through to the company. Elizabeth was standing at the company's main entrance with such vigor. Neither of us could say anything, but after a tense moment passed, Elizabeth smiled at me and asked me to come to the front door. "How dare a subcontractor like you come in with such an attitude?" "Wait! What if we let you up? You'll contaminate the company. I don't want the company to get dirty, so please leave." "What? Well then." Elizabeth's one-sided farewell with a sneer left both me and the employee in charge too surprised to say anything. We stood there, unable to react. Without even looking at us, Elizabeth disappeared into the back of the office. "Let's go home," I said to the employee in charge and got into my car. I still couldn't sort out what happened on the way back to the office. I kept silent for a while, then the staff member accompanying me started talking to me. "So the rumors are true." "What rumors?" I asked, looking at the employee who was gripping the steering wheel and facing forward. He continued with a sigh. I've heard from people at other companies that Elizabeth is a two-faced person. I heard that Mr. Victor is very busy these days, so Elizabeth is acting in the CEO's place by going to the subcontractors and acting like she's the CEO's representative. Another rumor about Elizabeth, the staff continued, is that she has an unfavorable reputation for being a stuck-up woman who borrows her father's name. She would say whatever she wanted, such as, "I'll review the contract amount, you'll have to adjust your schedule to ours," etc. When they don't listen to her, she gets very angry. Is that so? I replied, well, they say it's just a rumor, but she actually did a number on Johnson Chemical. Johnson Chemical? That's one of the most well-established companies in the world. That's not a concern of Elizabeth's these days. Elizabeth is taking over for her father, Mr. Victor, the CEO of the company. Elizabeth's father, Mr. Victor, is a little older than me and a senior figure in the industry. They say he's very busy these days. Mr. Gill has been a workaholic since he was a young man and enjoys being busy while energetically working as a CEO of his own company. I had also heard that he was an advisor to other companies in the same industry, and now, in place of this busy man, his daughter Elizabeth is now the face of the company. I didn't know that was going on at Mr. Gillard's place. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm just wondering, I guess. While the staff was talking about Elizabeth, I looked at his face. Although there was a bitter smile on his face, I was still not at peace with the fact that I had just suffered actual damage caused by Elizabeth. I had heard from the staff that Elizabeth had picked a fight with a well-established company in the industry. I have only seen Elizabeth's arrogance once, but as I began to hear one bad report after another about Elizabeth, I began to believe the rumors that were spreading. After Elizabeth's outburst against me and my staff, she continued to be disrespectful to our longtime business partners. There were signs of change in our relationship with our prime contractor. I began to think carefully about what I should do in the future. Since then, I have received a lot of information about Elizabeth's movements. It is true that she was still fighting with her business partners. She kept requesting unreasonable transactions from new business partners and was eventually refused. Elizabeth's bad reputation spread everywhere in the industry. Sometimes she showed her capable side, and there were rumors mixed in that she was trying to help small businesses that were in financial trouble. While I was doing my job, I paid attention to how I interacted with her company. I didn't want to be rude or, at any rate, I didn't want to irritate Elizabeth unnecessarily. With that in mind, I was conscious of the fact that it was really a business relationship. In the midst of these days, I was about to hold an annual company dinner party. It's been a custom since the company's birth to have a dinner party with everyone. I was looking forward to the dinner party at my favorite restaurant, which I had enjoyed for many years. I think we should seriously consider whether to establish a distribution center in the next fiscal year. Will we do it in-house, or will we outsource? We would like to do it in-house if possible, but we have to start by securing a site. That's the first hurdle for in-house management. Talking about work and personal life, there's always no shortage of topics at the dinner table. I feel a bit tired talking about work at a pleasant table, though, but on the other hand, it also makes me feel that my work is that much more fulfilling. The regular dinner party was a valuable opportunity for me to keep my spirits up. Wait a minute. Why are you here? I mean, are these people from your company with you? Elizabeth rushed over to the table where my colleagues and I were. The restaurant is small, and I could easily recognize anyone who entered, but I was so engrossed in our conversation that I didn't notice that Elizabeth had entered the restaurant. Gosh, I don't want to eat while looking at you guys. Elizabeth looked around our table and wrinkled her brow. She despised us with all her heart, and she didn't hide it. There were a few other customers in the restaurant, but they too stopped eating and looked at Elizabeth. I apologized for the other day. I was taken aback by Elizabeth's attitude but tried not to show it on my face and greeted her. I apologized for the incident the other day, hoping not to offend her. I thought I hadn't communicated with you well enough. Yes, it was a cocky thing to say, I admitted. Elizabeth didn't like my greeting. I had expected she would be in a bad mood, but she was even worse than that when she saw us. Do you know what kind of restaurant this is? She asked. Yes, I do. It's a great place with a prestigious yet homey atmosphere. Yes, I know that, but the important thing is that it's also a high-end place. Elizabeth asked me a question about the price. It was a small but not inexpensive restaurant, and the chef was a top chef who used to work at an upscale French restaurant. She asked if I knew the value of such a restaurant. She let out a loud sigh and became agitated. This is not a restaurant for a poor subcontractor. So ridiculous. I think that kind of behavior might cause trouble, I replied, trying to calm the situation. Elizabeth once again lashed out at me without regard to the gazes of those around her. She called me poor and threatened me to get out of the restaurant. I was so dumbfounded that I couldn't even say anything but firmly warned her to shut up. However, her anger did not subside but became worse because of my warning. Shut up! Elizabeth interrupted, shaking her head violently. I tried to quiet her down, but the next thing I knew, she snapped. I told you to shut up. She took the wine glass from my table and splashed the wine in my face. What are you doing? I exclaimed as red wine soaked from my face to the chest of my shirt. The first person to see this was one of the employees at the same table as me. He shouted, "No!" It's okay. I stopped him from raising his voice. I was the one who got tangled up with Elizabeth, not the employee. I knew I had to take care of this mess myself. Not wanting to inconvenience the restaurant and everyone around me, I took out my own handkerchief and wiped the wine off my face. First, you should have just stayed quiet, Elizabeth sneered. She was still not happy and asked me why I didn't leave the restaurant. Don't be a snob, just go home. You're going to get a stain. She finally let out a loud, satisfied laugh and called me miserable. I knew exactly what Elizabeth wanted to do, mistaking her father's prestige, which she only borrowed, as her own power and waving it around. Elizabeth, what are you doing? Do you know what you have done? The fight she got herself into, the provocation, I decided to confront Elizabeth and, for the first time, shouted out loud. Oh my God, do you think you will be forgiven for doing this? Of course I will be. My father is the CEO of a company that uses you subcontractors. As his daughter, I can do whatever I want. I didn't know Elizabeth's age exactly, but she must have been over 30. Her father, Mr. Gill, whom I was acquainted with, was older than me. I remember hearing from him once that his own daughter had entered the workforce. After that, I also began to hear that she was a good and dedicated worker, just like her father. But as the years passed, she had turned into a monster. She thought her father and herself were so great. I understand. If that's the case, tell your father he's dismissed as of today. Right now, I told Elizabeth with a straight face. If I try to do what I can for my company and the prime contractor, I have to remove Elizabeth's father from his position as CEO. Now, tell him now. I told her to call her father. She stared at me and sniffed. What? Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? What are you saying as a subcontractor? Just make the call anyway. Elizabeth scoffed at me, but when I urged her to do so, she responded with a cluck of her tongue. Okay, fine. I'll report you and your company while I'm on the phone. You're the ones crying. She pulled her cell phone out of the bag she was carrying. She made a phone call in a tedious manner and explained the situation to her father, Mr. Gill, who seemed to have eventually connected with her. Yes, the CEO of that company misunderstood me. He scolded me and said he was going to fire you, Daddy. Hey, I'm in trouble. Won't you help me out? Elizabeth stared at me and my coworkers as she spoke. She told her father in detail about her dissatisfaction and asked him to punish us. Gradually, however, Elizabeth's face grew tense. It all started with Mr. Victor's yell, which I could clearly hear. "How dare you!" he was shouting on the other end of the phone. "No, that can't be true. I didn't know that." Elizabeth was silent for a while, but then something must have snapped because she yelled, "No, I didn't know that." Then she looked at me with teary eyes. "No way, there's no way that dirty little subcontractor guy is a major shareholder." Elizabeth's eyes widened, her breath hit the air, and she continued to scream into the phone. Then she hung up the phone and looked at me, shaking slightly. "Did you understand?" "Huh? That's why I told you I was dismissing Mr. Victor. I'm asking you if you understood that." "I heard you," I said, looking at Elizabeth, who appeared totally sulky. But I didn't ask her what her father had told her. I knew that better than anyone. I used to be a board member of a former contract manufacturer of which Mr. Victor was the CEO. I was also one of the members who started the company in the first place. Mr. Victor's former CEO was a friend of mine from school. I had created the company with him and used to support him as a co-owner. I left my friend and the company because I wanted to test myself. I wanted to use my personality and knowledge in the same field as the company I had started with my friends, but in a slightly different way. I explained the situation to my friend, recruited a few employees, and started my own company. I remember my whole body trembling with nervousness when I got my own company, my own factory. When I became independent, my friend who was the CEO of the company also left. He decided to retire early and now enjoys fishing and reading in his birthplace. If you trace the connection between the former contractor and me back to the starting point, it began there. I also own stock in the company where I used to work, and I still do now, even after I have left the company. In addition, I have now bought more shares and am now the largest shareholder of the prime contractor. I don't usually talk about it. I never intended to and hoped it would never come to that, but Elizabeth crossed a line she shouldn't have crossed. It's unfortunate for you that you didn't know anything about it, but as for you, I guess I can only say you got what you deserved. You've got to be kidding me. Except that I'm not. You must be lying. Joke or not, I'm dismissing Mr. Victor. Elizabeth seemed to understand the whole situation, even though she didn't like it. She was sulky, looking away from me and mumbling bitterly. I told her that I had decided to dismiss Mr. Gill as CEO. "You jerk, you subcontractor idiot." Elizabeth lay on the ground. She looked up, lashed out at me, and tried to grab me. "Stop!" It was my colleagues who put their hands on Elizabeth's shoulders and held her back. I told her to be quiet, that I had had enough, and tried to get her to sit down on a chair. "You've got to be kidding me." My coworkers were urging Elizabeth to apologize to me, to the restaurant, and to the people who happened to be there. My colleagues tried to persuade Elizabeth, but she wouldn't listen and finally kicked the nearby chair. "Shut up." I apologized to no one. I glared at my coworkers as Elizabeth left the restaurant with a few words of apology. My colleagues and I apologized to the restaurant staff and the people who were there and ended the dinner party. The next day, I requested that the prime contractor hold a special meeting of the board of directors. I showed up at the board meeting as the one who called for the meeting and as one of the major shareholders of the company. Surrounded by a group of board members whose faces were pale after learning of the previous day's commotion, I proposed that Mr. Gill be removed as CEO and asked for his approval. Sooner or later, this would happen. "I am truly sorry that we could not make the decision ourselves," one of the board members revealed. The deeds of Mr. Victor and Elizabeth were discussed. Mr. Victor had been gradually changing people since he became CEO. Elizabeth was already a problematic child when her father asked her to join the company, and yet the company was unable to do anything about it, because they were afraid of the two of them. But now, let's ask Mr. Victor and Miss Elizabeth to leave. The meeting was about to end with a conclusion that everyone agreed on. From now on, we will have an opportunity to hold an extraordinary shareholders meeting and explain the situation to the shareholders. The people who attended the board meeting were tired, including myself, and wanted to release the tension for a while. But then Elizabeth suddenly interrupted us. "Excuse me, please allow me to apologize." A tearful Elizabeth opened the door of the meeting room where the board meeting was being held. "I am truly sorry. Please, it's all because of me. Please don't take it out on my father." She said she regretted her actions. Elizabeth begged me to save her father, no matter what happened to herself. I told her I would never change my mind. "Elizabeth, I can never do that." "Why? My father didn't do anything wrong." "Do you really think so?" I asked Elizabeth, who insisted that her father, Mr. Victor, was not at fault. "I looked into the fact that you are doing whatever you want in the name of Mr. Victor. You are putting pressure on the company internally and on your business partners. Mr. Gill, as a CEO and as a father, should have had more supervision and should have stopped you. Then again, I can't say that Mr. Victor was completely innocent. I heard he was suspected of embezzling money and filing fake business trips. Ever since the Elizabeth issues surfaced, I've been working to formally investigate her as well as gathering rumors. Elizabeth has been accused of harassment both within and outside the company. Her father, Mr. Victor, was suspected of embezzling company funds. In addition, Mr. Victor has been lying. He repeatedly made fake business trips to travel with his mistresses. In light of all this, I believe that you and Mr. Victor are no longer suited to this company. What do you think about that?" I finally asked Elizabeth, who fell silent. I let out a sigh as she burst into tears and gave a small nod. Then, from behind her, Mr. Victor finally appeared. "As for the future, let us decide. Your voices will now be heard in the proper form." I gave Victor and his daughter an ultimatum. When I told them that I would not accept their arguments, Elizabeth collapsed on the spot. Mr. Victor quietly leaned over to her, and with a stunned look on his face, apologized to us and pulled away. Within the week of the extraordinary board meeting, the issue with the Gills was put to rest. Mr. Gill was dismissed as CEO, and Elizabeth faced disciplinary dismissal without any opposition. The Gills left. They are now relying on relatives who tried to help them. However, they have not had a chance to return to society or find a new job. That's what they deserve anyway. That's what everyone who has heard about their recent situation has been saying. Please take care of us from now on. The new CEO of the main contractor has been appointed in a hurry, and the daily routine was about to return to normal. The new CEO was a mid-level employee whom I and the old management of the main contractor liked and saw as a promising prospect. He knew the subcontractors well and was a serious type with a strong work ethic. All the turmoil at the